but we can't see anymore, so.
That's all right. It's all good.
Okay, so this one live. Somebody check that?
Everybody smile.
I'm on the page, I don't see that. Yeah. Started.
It did? Okay.
Got a notification.
Somebody shut that. It's getting closed captions too.
Let's see.
Think you're good.
Good. Wow, closed captions.
And action.
Good morning, Litchfield. Thanks for tuning in to the What's Up page Roundtable. We're going to be interviewing 3 groups of people today. We're starting out with the Budget Committee. They are candidates. They are here with me right now. Thank you to the LCTV for staffing the event and broadcasting. They do a ton for our town. I want to thank them for being here and making us all look fabulous, right? It's a small town, and in a small town like ours, it's very important to get out and vote. Whatever your opinion is, if you don't get up and just vote, it's 7 to 7 on Tuesday at the high school. Parking, plenty of parking. Usually takes a couple minutes. This is a small, mostly local election, all local election. So it's very important that you show up at these, more so than the national ones. Please come out and vote. Takes minutes, absolute minutes, and we'll give you a sticker if you show up. For obvious reasons, I'll be interviewing the Budget Committee candidates and the Selectmen's candidates, and Jason will be making his moderator's debut as a interviewer for the school board positions. Mr. Larson wasn't able to make it, but Peter Plansky will be here, so there will be an opportunity to hear some of the school board answers that he has for you as a candidate. If you put your questions underneath the live feed, we will try to get to them. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce the candidates. Thank you very much for running. Without you people, we don't have a town. We don't do anything. We go nowhere. So let's start with that. It's really positive that you're all sitting here. We have 5 candidates for 3 positions. To my right, could you please introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about yourself?
My name is Carrie Douglas, and I also would like to echo the sentiments. Thank you guys for broadcasting this. It's so important for people to be able to meet and greet people. I have been a member of the Budget Committee for 9 years, and I have truly enjoyed the opportunity to serve this town in this capacity, and so I'm asking for another season. I am a former construction manager, trained in civil and structural engineering, and I've been able to use those experiences in my reviews, whether it's helping the town as they propose certain ideas, like the fire station, that was a big topic a few years ago, and help with the school as they have some projects on their horizon. So I appreciate the opportunity to take your questions and share my thoughts.
Thanks, Carrie. Mr. Stowe?
Sure, my name's Pete Stone. I've been in town since 2018. I served on the CIP committee for the past three years. My background is software engineering. I work for a federal consulting firm out of just outside of DC. I have a lot of experience doing budget work and federal contracts, oversight of projects. I am part of the leadership team at my firm for defense and national security and technology consulting. So I am looking forward to being able to serve you folks.
Thank you, Pete. Ms. Hirschberger?
Hi, my name is Tara Hirschberger, and I just finished up 5 years on the school board. I've lived in town for 27 years, 17 of that before I even had kids in the school. So I also, it's been a long time here in town. I was a member of the Women's Club, the Gardens Club. I was the founding president of the Litchfield Lions Club, founding president of the Litchfield Flag Football Association, still running today, both of those still running today, and I have been very involved in the schools even before being on school board. I started off as a room parent like many people do, and it kind of just grew from there. Professionally, I have been working for a number of years. I put a lot of it on the What's Up page, but currently I work for a national nonprofit Previous to that, I worked for a couple different ad agencies, and I was a media planner, so involving creating and managing budgets there, as well as in my current position. And then I also worked for the state's largest hospital, managing the marketing budget for that organization as well.
Thank you. Mr. Sun?
Great, thanks, Diane, and I'll echo what Carrie said, and just want to thank LCTV and the What's Up page for hosting these sessions. John David Sun, I just finished first 3 years on the Budget Committee, the last year as chair, and it was a real honor and privilege to work with the group. We had a very collaborative process and a very difficult year on both the town and the school side. My background, we've been in town for about 5 years. Wife Lauren and 2 kids, Abigail and Hannah, both at GMS. Spent my time volunteering through a lot of the sports organizations, basketball, coaching soccer. And, for me, it's really about giving back to the town. Even though we've only been here for a short period of time, I love volunteering and love giving back to a town that's already given a lot to us. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm Kate Stevens. We have been in town 12 years now. We've got 2 kids that were born and we're planning on raising here. And let's see, I've been on the budget committee for 2 years. This past year, I was vice chair. Been on the planning board 5 years, and I've been the vice chair for a few years on that. And I'm here to volunteer. Like volunteerism is the lifeblood of the town. Like, we have a lot of services in town that would not happen, including these presentations, without volunteers. So thank you, everybody, for putting this together. And I'd like to continue my work. I joined the budget. I started running for the budget committee because I saw the tensions between the school board and the budget committee, and I'm hoping to create a more collaborative environment between the 2 boards.
Okay, thank you, Kate. I'm going to start with you and go back this way this time. Why are you running for the budget committee? In just a couple words, just why the budget committee? You've done other boards. There's a lot of talent in this room. Why the budget committee?
I didn't just say that I'm an engineer by trade, so numbers are my thing, and so budget committee felt like a good fit.
Okay.
And like I said, I want to try and have our 3 boards, Board of Selectmen, School Board, and the Budget Committee, work together towards, because we're all in the same boat. We need to keep everything moving together.
Are there other boards that you would want to serve on as well, as a candidate? Would you run for any of the other boards that are out there? This is a question that I'm just kind of throwing in.
Well, I would, if time allows, I would definitely run for school board at some point, I think. But right now, with 2 small kids, I already pay a lot to volunteer for babysitting. So, budget-wise, it makes more sense right now in the budget committee.
Okay, thank you. Same question, John.
Yeah, I'd say, one of the things I didn't mention either, my background is I spent almost 15 years in public schools, 12 of those as an administrator, handling and managing multi-million-dollar budgets. And so having done that work on the public side was part of the reason I ran 3 years ago. I think similar to Kate, my leadership style is about building relationships, trust, and rapport. And so the budget committee is a unique group in town that really has an opportunity to work with both the school board and the selectmen. And without that collaboration, that trust and rapport, it's difficult to get things done. And so I think that's one of the things that intrigues me about continuing with the budget committee is how can we get all of our boards together in town, and not just those, the rec and the conservation and the historical. How can we continue to work together to move the town forward?
Awesome.
So for me, the reason I'm interested in budget committee, honestly, is that for as long as I've been on school board, I've been interested in the budget committee, but I never had an opportunity until this year to participate in that process. And I had an opportunity to participate when a school board member who volunteered for the committee resigned after the news came out about the school. So I gladly took on the position. I was the deputy position as the backup, and I stepped right up, and I confronted the budget committee during a very difficult time of the school board and was not afraid to do it. I learned a ton. I think I mentioned on my What's Up post that every time I walked my dog, instead of listening to music, which is what I love to do normally, I would watch every single meeting there was for the town. Selectmen, conservation, planning, every single one. I would check them off, and if you go on the YouTube page, I like them all, so you can see which ones I've watched. I watched every single one of those. So that's how I educated myself. I met with the town administrator. I attended a couple different budgeting sessions from the Municipal Association as well as the School Boards Association. So for me, it was very much about learning the whole process from the budget committee perspective and, as intimately familiar with the school board that I I was not as intimately with the town, so I felt like that's where my biggest learning curve needed to happen. So I did everything I could to listen and learn, so that's what piqued my interest, and that's why I'm running.
Okay. Obviously, serving on the CIP, I've got to interact with all the different boards in the town and the school. My background, working federal contracts, it's kind of a natural fit because I end up doing budgeting for, we have contracts that are hundreds of millions of dollars that I work with on a daily basis. We do a lot of oversight in insurance companies. That's what the software package that I'm currently working on. So we do oversight. We interact with those folks and validate all their numbers to make sure all the insurance policies are correct and any claims that are charged out stay in line, and we have, federal rules, security boundaries, and a lot of other things I can't discuss that,
I want to hear those.
Yeah, I can't throw those out there. But yeah, so this kind of was a natural progression for me coming out of the CIP as a citizen rep.
Been on the budget committee, you're the veteran that's sitting here for election right now. You're back at it. How come?
I love it. So honestly, like I said, I'm an engineer by training. I'm a math person. I like numbers. They make sense to me. I was a construction manager where we developed large budgets. We managed them, worked with a variety of interests, the contractors, the clients, the architects, the engineers, all working together to find a solution that meets everybody's needs, and to deliver within budget on schedule. And it's not an easy thing to do. You have to build the teamwork and relationship, ask the questions, be willing to listen and answer. And those are skills that I feel I brought to the town, help review the budgets line by line, understand which questions to ask, who to ask. I've built relationships over the years with a variety of the department heads and members of the various boards. I'm available to discuss, and I feel I bring a understanding of where we've been, sometimes how we've gotten here, and how we can improve going forward. So for me, the budget committee is a natural extension of my personality, and so I feel like it's a great opportunity for me to give back in that way.
Okay, I asked Kate first, but I'm going to start here, and I'm going to go back this way. If you weren't running for budget committee, where else would you run to work in the town?
So I have run for other positions, but currently we're at my.
All at once.
I'm sorry.
All at once.
All at once. Yeah. Looking back, God knew better than I did. So, because had that been successful, I wouldn't be successful in other areas of my life right now. But right now, I volunteer where I can within town, but board-wise, I'm comfortable with the people who are running them, who are interested in it, not the people themselves. Obviously, there's some change I'm very eager to help facilitate. But for me, the budget committee, I think, is where it's my home right now, and I leave the schools to the people who are in them and who have more expertise on those. And the town, I appreciate all the time and effort they go into it. You'll hear later how many meetings some of these people go to. I have 2 kids also. thank the people who make the time to go to all those meetings, I don't think I could really give it the effort and the attention that such a position truly warrants in order to be done well.
What about you, Pete?
I think I can echo the last part of Carrie's statement. I mean, obviously, working in the realm that I work in, a consulting firm, I'm pretty busy, so some of the other options are probably more intense than I can take on right now. I oversee 10 development teams and do business development and other things, and they take up a lot of my time. So, I am able to carve out significant time to volunteer on the CIP and some other boards. But
Terry, you've stepped out of your realm and walked into
This
a new
is
place
cutting
to
back
run.
for me. So I can tell you last fall doing, I was on school board, budget committee, emergency management, and wellness. And between all four of those, it was probably a full-time job on top of my full-time job.
But if you weren't running for this job,
Oh, yeah.
and you've already done the school board, would you, I guess, look at selectman's position? Is that something that you're ever going to be interested in doing?
I can't say ever, but honestly, I would be most interested if I weren't running for budget committee to run for recreation commission.
Recreation, okay.
Wellness I am so passionate about wellness. I was on the wellness committee for the whole time that I was on the school board.
So you must be excited about the pickleball. that's
I
coming
am.
into town. I am too.
Yes, actually, I
Yeah.
organized the Campbell High School wrestling team to go learn how to play pickleball and have a team bonding event this winter at Talent Hall with
So long
the
as they don't
support
take any of my
the
pickleball time, I'm fine.
No, it was just once.
John, you've run for school, for the budget committee successfully. You've become their chair. What else would you do if you weren't going to do this?
Yeah, my wife might kill me if I say this, but I think probably school board. That's my passion and my background. Just having both my parents were educators. I spent 15 years working in schools. I work for a large global education technology company now. My job has me traveling the country, working with schools, districts, and educational leaders. I think down the road, a lot like Kate said a few minutes ago, maybe when my kids get a little bit older, there's an opportunity to give back through the school board. But right now, I think the budget committee is the best fit for me.
Thanks very much. And Kate, you've already answered me. So I'm going to start in on some of the town financial stuff that's going on. How do you feel about the tax cap for the selectmen, or not the selectmen, but the town side of the budget? How do you feel about that warrant article that would change the way the tax cap is calculated right now? Right now, it's a flat amount, correct? How do you feel about that? Do you think it should change or stay the same?
I think it needs to be a percentage. It makes more sense. And I said it at, I think it was deliberative, just because it's set at 5% doesn't mean the Board of Selectmen need to use that as the cap, because if you watch meetings over the past few years, it's sort of like they start at 175 is like, what can we do within that?
Yep.
Where it should be, start at flat, and then what extra little things do we need to take on or not? So I would really like to
Do you think the school board
see.
needs one? Is that even legal?
I don't think it'll
It's
hurt.
legal,
It's it's a budgeting tool, so I don't think it would hurt. But I do think that the Board of Selectmen need to put a policy into place that just because the max is 5%, to actually work with, and now I can't think of the acronym, but use the economy and inflation to really tell where that cap should be each year, and
So
use that as a
percentage
guideline.
seems to you the way to go.
Yeah, I agree, and I supported this warrant article and said something similar at deliberative. I know our town administrator actually did a lot of homework on this to see if we could align it to the CPI index, but unfortunately we couldn't. From a legal perspective, it either had to be a flat dollar amount or it had to be a set percentage. I think we found ourselves in a very challenging year this year, and I think the board. I said this the other day on a Facebook post. I think the Board of Selectmen did a really good job of coming in a very challenging year when we had rising costs due to previous warrant articles that had been passed. When we had rising costs for utilities, their job was to deliver a budget that meets the needs of the town. Our job as the budget committee was to get it under that tax cap. That's our legal obligation. I think in a year when we had a set flat amount, there were some really, really difficult conversations and questions that had to be asked.
So
And-
that percentage is where you would go.
And I think the percentage gives not only the town, but the budget committee, the ability to adjust if and when we need to. It doesn't necessarily mean, this is what I said at deliberative, that it's going to go up 5% every year. It gives us that latitude if and when we need
Budget
it.
committee can still say no.
Budget committee can still bring that down
Okay.
to best meet the needs of the taxpayers.
Terry, you were really critical of how the selectmen arrived. You stepped up at deliberative, and you've mentioned it in your.
Oh, I did vote against this. I voted against this because I felt like 5% was too much. And just given the experience of this year, where the selectmen did not provide a budget that was under the tax cap, from my understanding for the first time ever, that challenged me to really think about, would that 5% be the not just the max, but is that where they would come in? And then also, part of my analysis was looking at prior years and the increases that the town has seen year to year, and including the warrants, and that's been between 3% and 4% on average for a good, I think I went back 15 years. So the town already is seeing, that 3.5% increase every year. And then with warrants, and then to add a potential 5% over that, I just didn't think that was sustainable.
Do you think the school board should have a tax cap?
I think it will be up to the voters to decide.
I'm kind of asking your opinion. The school board there isn't a warrant article up there.
Right. I
Do you
mean, I
think it's
really
something
have.
that would help keep?
I haven't really considered it, to be honest. I
Okay.
would listen to the
Thank you.
sides.
I'm not intimately familiar with this myself, but I would lean toward a percentage also myself, and having a 5% buffer point to adjust. I mean, I think one of the things that we saw on the CIP, fire engines coming in, police department needs. I think some of those things, they're never the same, and having some headspace to handle those changing needs, or the cost of fuels and other things that are outside of the control of folks at the time they make the budget, right? I mean, we're going to have a shift over time, especially right now with things that are going on. That's kind of where I sit with that.
So do you think that we should go to a percentage, or do you think?
Yeah, I think we should do a percentage.
Okay, Kelly?
So I actually remember when the tax cap was originally proposed and implemented, and this discussion came up at that time. And the Board of Selectmen insisted, 175,000, we'll be able to live with it. It's amazing how short of time that's been and how we've already come up against that. So in theory, I absolutely believe that a percentage is necessary. I mean, as our costs increase, our ability to live within that is going to be more challenging unless our tax cap itself increases with it.
Do you feel that's why the selectmen came in over that 175? Is that?
I feel that there have been a lot of challenges that the town has faced recently that have in the grand scheme of things, it's not a large budget. I've had change orders larger than the town budget. Mm-hmm. So it's one big purchase, the communications tower, it ate up the entire budget, the tax cap, which leaves no room for pay raises, utility increases, and other things that are naturally going to be a part of it. My concern with it, and why I voted against it, is I have a problem with 5%. I think I made a motion at deliberative to try to amend it to 4%, and clearly that didn't work. So because we see 5, but in principle, I agree with the idea. I struggle with the number because
Budget committee still has final veto power on that.
Well, so my concern is I feel that the budget committee looks at the budget and targets the tax cap. So by automatically having a 5%, it doesn't necessarily force the budget committee to really dig into the numbers as much as I would encourage.
How do you feel about a tax cap for the school?
I proposed one many years ago. I got my 25 signatures and submitted it, and it got gutted at deliberative. So
It got voted down?
well, it got amended to change it dramatically. So I firmly believe that if we're going to apply a tax cap to the town for equity purposes and equality, then the school also should be subject to a tax cap.
Okay. Let's see here. How do we balance, I'm gonna go back to you, because okay. How do we balance rising costs for the town and the school, some due to inflation, some due to previous warrant articles?
I'm balancing what.
This is a question from one of our citizens.
So I mean, I am very conscientious of the tax impact of everything we do. I review the budget line by line. I look at individual costs and then ask, at the end of the day, when I look at it, knowing that some of my neighbors are struggling, do I feel comfortable asking them for this increase? Can I, in good conscience, ask my neighbor who may be relying on the local food bank to pay this in their taxes? And so there are going to be natural increases. We see rising costs through contracts, inflation, and other stuff. But just as people at home deal with a limited budget, the town also has limited budget. So there are going to have to be trade-offs. We're going to have to figure out what truly is a need and what might be a want that we can find another way of funding it, whether it's through grants, whether it's through local fundraising, whether it's through maybe we don't need it this year, maybe fund balance, some other way of funding it. I truly do try to balance what we need with what we can afford.
Thank you.
It's not always easy.
No? What about you, Peter? I know you haven't
Yeah.
had the hands-on budget.
I mean, I think a lot of what Carrie said, I'm kind of in line with. I mean, obviously, considerations for others in the town, right? I mean, we have to do budgeting in our house, right? And we can't just go, hey, you know what, I want to put a pool in on a whim and I have no way to pay for it. But I mean, that comes down to a lot of triage and prioritization of what's being requested for, town and school. And, to Carrie's point, I mean, there's a lot of folks in town that are generational here, and some of them are on fixed income at this point, right? And, I wouldn't feel good if I was raising taxes to a point where people couldn't afford to stay in the town that have been here for their whole lives.
Appreciate that. Tara?
So we need to look at our revenue sources. I think we need to keep after grants and seek new opportunities and enlist community members with this talent to help. I think we need to advocate at the state level for increased funding, and because every time there's a decrease, taxpayers are having to pick up the gap. I personally would like to understand the revaluation process better. I've heard it happens every 4 years, yet I seem to get a call every year to revalue my house. Is this happening in other towns? Are we overpaying on this? I think it's important to use the powers of volunteers wherever possible, and we have a long, wonderful history with that in our town, but I know that there are other areas that this can happen. And I think we also need to look at improving our energy efficiencies, with a potential police station on the horizon. I know also there's CHS energy efficiency improvements in the capital improvement plan too. So those are some ideas.
Do you want me to repeat the question, or you got it?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
It was a while ago I said it. How do we balance rising costs for the town and the school, some due to inflation, some due to previous warrant articles?
Yeah, great question. And I think a lot of things that have been said, I agree with. We have to seek out additional sources of revenue, whether that's grants, whether that's federal dollars, state dollars. I also think it's about balancing needs versus wants. I think that's really important. And I think our budget committee over the last 2 or 3 years has done a really good job of that, of asking those tough questions. I think some specific examples of that are when you look at the utilities on both the school and the town side. I credit Ms. Douglas for that, for asking that question back in November at the fire station on the school side, of asking them to reach out to our suppliers and can we negotiate lower rates. So it's tough questioning like that, but it's also our school and town people following through and doing that. The fire truck is a great example of that. The diligence that the interim chief and his team showed to continue to ask those questions, and now we have an opportunity to get a fire truck at a reduced cost and leveraging ESSER funds. It's due to that, asking those tough questions, continuing to pursue all opportunities for funding sources that are out there. And when we do that collaboratively, we're going to make impact. And the last thing I'll say to that is when you think about, Pete alluded to this about pricing people out of town. It was something we were challenged with the budget committee this year, because we had warrant articles that we could not support from a legal standpoint for the tax cap without making some additional cuts to the town budget. And one of those that was incredibly important to me was the Health and Human Services that provides critical dollars to some of our most neediest people in town. And so, I proposed a cut to the town budget in order for us to, as a budget committee, to be able to support that warrant article. Because when people go to vote on Tuesday, a lot of times they look at, are these articles recommended by the Board of Selectmen, by the school board, and by the budget committee? And so it's really important when we look at an article like that that provides critical funds to people in town that the budget committee supports that.
I always look to see whether or not the board that presented it and the budget committee recommend. I always look, and I always look at the number of votes. I like when I see a little difference, And Kate,
Well, you can see what I wrote here because I basically wrote exactly what you just said.
I read your
that's the
notes
best
from
part
over here.
about being able to go last, and that's why I trade it back and forth. The middle people just kind of get stuck with the same position. You get to hear what's happening.
But it really does. It goes back to the CIP, which I know, Pete, you helped with this year. We really need to manage some of those things. Like, there are infrastructure issues that we have that really need to be taken care of. But like you said, we can't just fix them all at once and blow the budgets. We need to manage those major projects. And then, as John David said, our town administrator and our business administrator this year, they really went back and worked with, vendors, energy prices, to further reduce those
Kim's
costs.
an amazing asset. Our new town
Absolutely, and I do
administrator. She's
think
an
that-
amazing asset. I haven't talked to anyone who hasn't said that Kim has helped them do their job better.
Absolutely. And I do think part of the reason why the budget or the Board of Selectmen had some trouble bringing the budget to us under the tax cap is because she didn't come on board until October, I think. So that entire summer of working with each department to reduce those budgets was lost. So there was a little bit of difficulty there. And then same thing as John David said. Then it's also the department heads coming in, like Chief Nickel, interim Chief Nickel. He threw a Hail Mary pass, asking the manufacturer at the very last minute, like, any chance you have a demo truck? And they did. And all he did was ask that simple question. After talking with these people for multiple years, they weren't going to offer up that information. So he did the town a huge win for that, and we really do need to support that warrant article, I think, for them.
Thanks, Kate. There's been some, as the outside observer, tension between boards in town. That needs to change. People need to be able to work together in boards and together in with other boards. Kate, what would you do to help? You're in one of those boards right now. How do you think that we can change that?
I think, as my background is lean manufacturing, and a lot of that is dealing with different departments and going through basically a supply chain. And you would get one department that would be upset because they can't get their work done because this department didn't really finish their work to the quality that it needed to be done. But this department never talks to this department that says, hey, these are my expectations. This is what we need. So I find that there are a lot of opportunities in town to set policies between boards that, they can always go back and change if needed. And just set those expectations up front so that there's no argument down the line. I know Andrew Cutter's working on one at the school board level that I have pushed for since getting onto the budget committee, and I hope to see that goes through. And I think that's kind of the very first small step between different boards trying to get those policies into place.
Yeah, I said this earlier, and it might seem like an oversimplification, but I think it's building trust and rapport. You know, that's my background. That's one of the strengths that I have. Since we've been in town for 5 years, and even thinking back for the last 3 years that I've been on the budget committee, one of the things that I've made a priority is listening to people with different backgrounds and perspectives. People that have kids in school, people that don't have kids in school, and people that have been in town for generations and generations. Because if we come into these conversations with blinders on and singular lenses with one group of people or a small group of people, we're not really making decisions for what's best for everyone in town. And so my belief and my background is you have to listen to everybody. Folks that have been in town for hundreds of years and folks that have been in town for 2 years. You have to listen to the things that are important to them and bring all of those things to the table. And I think when we do that, and we do that in a respectful manner, we're going to agree, we're going to disagree. And disagreeing is healthy and it's important. It's when we come to a consensus, we support things moving forward, we move this town forward. I think the last thing, that I'll add to that is I've heard it mentioned on the school side a couple of times, and I'm fully in favor of this once we get on the other side of the elections, is the chairs of the boards coming together and working collaboratively. And I know they used to do this in the past. The school boards brought it up a couple of times. It was in January. Budget committee was kind of done with our work for the year. I think once we get into the spring, I think that's something that should come back. That
even a picnic with all the members of all the boards. I know that would probably take it out of the realm of having to take minutes and notes and stuff. Be kind of fun. I mean, get everybody together and do a barbecue.
I'm sure the chair of our select board would grill for us, right? Yeah.
Most likely, I've heard he's a very good cook, personally. Tara, what about you as far as getting these boards so that they're nice to each other?
Well, I can speak from my experience joining the budget committee literally at the last minute before they started meeting weekly. I didn't have the benefit of sitting in on the monthly meetings, participating in those kind of pre-budget season meetings that I think are relationship building. So I know, I know from my perspective, there were emotions that were, there were some emotional, highly charged times. And I think I can personally do better for that. But I think I came into a very difficult time. Anybody who knows me knows that I'm very much even keel, and I always think about things before responding. So I suggested, actually, when I was on the budget committee as the school board rep, I did suggest that the board chairs meet. I was trying to get that initiated this year, passing along the word that the school board did want to meet. The budget committee chair offered to meet, but there was no response whatsoever from the selectmen. So I do believe the board chairs should be meeting. I think that's a good start. Interestingly enough, the school has a fabulous relationship with police, fire, and town officials and staff. So I don't think it's everybody. I think that, from a budget committee perspective, it would really help if, and one idea I have is maybe budget committee members could be like honorary members on different boards, like get assigned to different boards to attend.
More meetings, Tara? You're asking for more meetings?
Like I said, this is cutting back for me, so I'm all for it. I think if it helps to build the relationships, I am all for it.
Okay, thank you.
And then also reiterating what Kate had to say about stating expectations up front. I had suggested a memorandum of agreement or understanding between the budget committee and school board, and the budget committee did not want to move forward with that. So I would, if elected, I would move forward with trying to see something like that, so that the expectations are clear between boards.
Thank you. Pete, with your background in business? How do you work on collaboration?
I have some similar ideas to folks. I mean, having the chairs of the boards meet is certainly a good idea. I will tell you with my dev teams, they are passionate folks and they always have differing opinions how they want to create their solutions to problems. And a lot of this, I guess from my perspective, and just like I have in my day-to-day, a lot of this is just personalities. And I think there's opportunity to even go further than just the chairs and get, if there's an issue that's on the table and there's friction, I think those two boards should meet in their entirety and have a conversation and get on the same page. Getting that stuff out in the open and letting people kind of discuss it. And I think, we come back to transparency for everyone to make sure that everything's out in the open. They talk through it, put all the views on the table, and then come to a consensus of what that outcome would look like.
Kind of trust building.
Yeah, exactly. And then, but at the same time, I mean, all these boards, they operate independently, but they're all symbiotic to some level, right?
Exactly.
So.
Ms. Douglas.
So I do agree with the idea of the chairs meeting. I do caution that sometimes, though, because I believe the last one I sat in was not as collaborative as I would have hoped, which could be why they fell apart. There was a lot of blaming going on behind closed doors.
Seems to be.
So, but one of the things
Inside.
one of the things I think is the recognition that each board has its own purpose. The school board advocates for the school and the students in that community. The Board of Selectmen advocates for the town services in the town. The Budget Committee advocates for the taxpayers who fund both of those. Different personalities are naturally attracted to each board. I'm an engineer. I like numbers. I'm attracted to the Budget Committee. There are certain other personalities that are attracted to the school and other stuff. And sometimes we just don't naturally speak the same language. My sister is a very emotional person. I am a very logical person. It took 23 years for us to be able to have a conversation without trying to kill each other because we were just talking past each other. So it's just one of those, we're talking but not really recognizing where the other person's coming from. And so I think some of that breeds a sense of, you're asking me a question, you must have thought I did it wrong. No, I'm not asking you a question because it's a personal attack. It's because I need more information to make a better decision. So sometimes I feel that because there's a feeling of attack, well, I'm just not going to answer the question. So we raised questions about the finances of LMS in May, and we didn't get an answer until like September. So when you don't get the responses, it breeds mistrust. Mistrust then breeds a lack of communication. And so it's a vicious, vicious cycle.
It is.
So I think we have to recognize that we all are in, like it was said earlier, we're all in this for the same thing, right? We want the town to benefit. We want the best for our kids. Recognize that the other person is coming with good intentions.
Yeah.
I may not always agree with what you're saying, but I probably do agree with your end goal. So how can we work together in a way we can all agree to get to that point? I mean, I may not be doing it for the same reason as you are, but if we end up at the same end point,
We got to do this, people. we absolutely got to do this. I've sat in on a lot of meetings lately. I've been to probably everybody's meetings. I don't think I even went to the budget committee meeting begging for money for conservation. But I sat in a lot of these meetings, and one of the school board's meetings that I was sitting in, there was a person behind me that I thought was a student, and there was bickering going on that wasn't being productive. And behind me, the person kind of leaned forward to me and said, and the end result is the kids are going to suffer from this. The town suffers when we can't work together, folks. We've got to find a point where we can grow together. So I do, if you get elected, please remember the other boards are important. Please remember that it's this respect part of it. Carrie, I'm going to start with you on this one, and this might be my last question. Are you excited and happy? I'm excited.
no, because I love talking to you.
I love talking to you too, Carrie. So this question, I'm glad I'm starting with you.
Oh, boy.
Because you actually got kind of a little attack on the What's Up page, because in our community, it seems like if you question the finances of in this particular case, it was the school board, that people think that you're anti-children and anti-teacher and anti-school. How do you feel about that? I read your response. I thought it was really good. I want to hear it from everybody. That's why I'm bringing it to all of you.
I think it's unfortunate, and it really does. Makes it difficult to have honest conversations when your first thought is, how am I gonna be perceived? Like, if I question something and it comes across as I hate children, then am I going to further engage in that conversation? There's an entire segment that's lost at that point. If people are afraid or uncomfortable with sharing their honest views, then you're not. When you talk to them, are you getting their honest view? Are they telling you what you think you want to hear just so that they are better viewed? It's just, I think it comes down to a mutual respect to people. Like, and I hope it came across. I'm not going to agree with everybody. Straight up, I'm not. But I would like to understand where people are coming from so I can say, you know what, I never thought of it that way. Or maybe we can approach the same goal by working together on a common ground. But when we start with the attacks and the pitchforks from the start, it's not going to be a productive, healthy conversation. I welcome the conversation. I'm willing to talk to, clearly, lots of people who don't like me. So, but it's just, but it's good though, because sometimes it challenges me to say, all right, this is my opinion. I understand where you're coming from. Is my opinion even right? Do I need to modify or adjust my stance? Why do I feel the way I do? So for me, it makes me really self-reflect on some of my positions. But at the end of the day, I think that we have to respect that people are coming from different places. They have different priorities and thoughts. And it doesn't mean that a disagreement is a personal attack. It's just sometimes a different point of view.
Okay, so the question was really more, if you're questioning finances, are you against?
No, I don't agree.
So-
I think that if you're questioning finances, I'm literally just questioning the numbers and the logic behind it.
Okay,
It's-
because that's what you were attacked on, is that you were always.
Right. So I think it's sometimes you just need to have an understanding of how did you get that number. Maybe for example, the electricity rates at the school that came in at 45 cents per kilowatt hour in the school board's delivered budget. Questioning that number doesn't mean that I don't like kids. It just means that I think 45 cents per kilowatt hour might have been a little high.
It was a little high.
High.
And that's kind of what I was getting at. Pete?
I think going back to, and I think a lot of it's been covered already. I mean, I think personalities, differing opinions, everybody's going to have them. We live in a very polarized environment of recent years, unfortunately. But I mean, I just because someone may not agree with an approach, I don't think that necessarily means that they hate kids. I mean, I got 2 of my kids in the school system, so I'm pretty sure I don't hate children. Just because I might not agree with, somebody else's approach and path and thoughts. But I mean, I think going back to what we've all summed up here is, at the end of the day, we have a finite amount of money that we can handle. We can't just crush people into oblivion to get wants and things that may not fit with our budget scope for the town.
Thank you.
All right, restate the question, please.
Okay, so it came from a question where Kerry was not rubber stamping the school board's budget. And what it came out to me was that if you question how the school is spending money, or question where they came to their numbers, that you hate children, that you're really against the school. How do you cope with that and still do your job to review these numbers?
I think it's a big jump. I think that as a budget committee member, you have to take the personality out of it. You have to vote based on, the information that you see and what is best for, the town, the taxpayers, the students, the community, and I think that, it does question in people's minds, I think, if there's, if somebody consistently votes against the school or the town, there are definitely going to start to be questions. And particularly if you don't have kids in the school. Maybe the questions are about, like, is that understanding really there? I think that those are valid questions to think about and consider, but I think that in all of this, we need to take the personalities out of it, because it really just comes down to, the budget.
So if
I
you
believe
have
the
to, if you
budget
have to
committee
vote
members
down
are looking
something
at the
that
numbers.
comes, if you have to
that?
vote down something that comes,
Yep.
and you're in, from the school or from the town, and somebody says you're anti-town or anti-school or anti-child.
Yep.
That's gonna be tough, right? How are you gonna deal with that? I mean,
Diane, I've lived through the last 6 months, okay? I mean, nothing can be harder than that. We've had attacks at the school board. I'm tough. I can handle
were they
it.
attacks or were they questions? We'll go on to that later. John David?
Yeah.
Same thing. You're asking questions. Does that make you hate children if you vote against?
I would hope not. I have kids that are going to be in the school system for the next 12 years at least. I think asking questions is really one of the core foundations of the budget committee. You have to ask those tough questions. You have to be comfortable to ask those tough questions.
Which means you have to do your homework.
Doing your homework, all that's part of that. There were votes this year. You can go back and watch meetings where I didn't vote to support certain things on the school side, and that doesn't mean that I hate kids or that I'm looking to provide less services for my own children. It's taking that larger perspective of what can we afford, what do we need, and looking beyond just my own 2 kids or people that have kids in schools. It's the entire town of Litchfield. And I think one of our colleagues on the budget committee, Scott Taylor, has said this well in the past. Our job as a budget committee is really like the chief financial officer for the town. We have to ask those tough questions. We have to look at expenses, at budgets, and if we're not asking those questions and doing our homework and coming prepared, then, we're not doing our job as a budget committee.
So you have to ask those questions.
Yes.
Kate?
So I think some of it is tone, and some of it is people need to grow a thicker skin. And I brought this up I think it was between the chairs of the school board and the budget committee. Because, I'm not going to advocate for masking, but I swear the first year I was on the budget committee, I think we were required to wear masks for at least the first half of it or so. And the meetings, I think, went smoother because the emotions were muted.
Couldn't see the
because you
smiles?
couldn't see your face.
So you're
That's a
advocating.
unique perspective. Masks are now required so we can all get along.
But it did. It really did.
You can't tell what people are thinking, which is why the kids were having such a problem in school, right?
Right. So I'm not
That's not
advocating
bad.
for masking, but it took the emotion out of it, and it gave. So you were really listening to the actual question and the numbers behind them, and but I will say that absolutely, and I've seen it over the past year, and it's been really nasty to see the heckling of the school board at especially that September meeting, and then the heckling of there was a selectman that made comments about the elementary school. There was heckling there too, and that really grinds my gears. And we just need to take the emotion out of it and just like I said, we're all in the same boat. There's nothing wrong with questions and disagreements, but we're still all trying to move the same way.
Okay, thank you very much, you guys. That was a tough one. I appreciate you humoring. What are your thoughts on the default school budget? How was the vote on the budget committee on the
It's 5-4 to recommend for the operating.
5-4? So that was really close. There was a lot of negotiation that probably happened to get that to pass, because I think it went to deliberative, not recommended.
No, it went to deliberative recommended. There was a warrant article, one of the warrant articles was not recommended,
Okay.
and then it flipped at
Okay.
deliberative. Yeah.
So 5-4, so it was a close one. Will the impact, the $1.5 million is still out there, is a topic. And it was apparently, we were able to find that money. Will the impact be as bad as the school is saying? There was a bullet point that was put out by the school board that basically said, by teachers, by services, if this budget doesn't pass. Yet the number of the default budget itself is
$792.
$792,000 more than we spent last year.
Budget seven,
It's-
the default 715 more. The
715.
difference between the two is about 792.
Yeah.
Okay, so last year, the approved budget was $715,000 less than the default budget. So that's already gone up. It's supposed to cover contractual obligations, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's happened. And then the operating budget now has a $470,000 capital that's additional to the $1.5 million LMS overspend. It's that continuation. Knowing all your numbers, which you all do, is that bulletproof that if the default, which you don't know, you really don't know what's going to happen with this. It's kind of scary either way. They're under budget most years. Last year, they were under budget before they found the $1.5,800,000. Okay? Do we really have to get rid of teachers if we don't vote for this budget? Do you think that there's ways around that? I'm going to start with you, Kate.
Flat answer, I'm not sure if we need to get rid of teachers. I would expect that they'd probably let the music teacher go that we had. I personally had advocated to keep, like just not as a budget committee member, just came to speak at school board meeting in person. But if I were the school board and and the default was voted in, I would stop the LMS project over losing teachers. But I'm not on the school board, so we'll have to see.
So it's bottom line budget. They really can do if they want. So if they do that, it's kind of their selection to do that.
It's up to them.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I agree with Kate. I mean, ultimately, I think if we find ourselves in a default budget, the school board's going to have some really difficult choices ahead of them. I personally voted to support the operating budget. I think on the school side, the SAU, the school board, and the budget committee, we spent a lot of time within going through that budget and made a lot of cuts. And so I think when we found ourselves at the end of our budgeting process, I felt comfortable where we were with an operating budget because we had done our diligence and made cuts where we felt like they were necessary as a budget committee. Do I think that if we go into a default budget, is the school going to have to potentially cut people? I mean, when you look at their budget, 80% of it is people and personnel.
Unfilled positions, though.
There are unfilled positions. I think that's correct. And that has been kind of a running conversation if you've followed some of the school board. They've talked about, potential underspend that could come out of this year's budget. I think part of that is because there have been positions that they haven't filled. Either they haven't been able to find qualified candidates or they've chosen not to fill some of those positions because of looking for cost savings measures. I can't speak to the why behind that. I think it's going to be very difficult to try to cover 20% of a $25 million budget. When you look at that, just rough math tells you that's $5 million. And when you have almost 20% of that you're going to then have to cut, you're either going to cut a lot of stuff or a little bit of people. And I think that's some really hard choices. I agree with Kate that I think I'm all about protecting people. I don't want to see anybody in this town lose their job.
Yep.
And if I were on the school board and had to make that tough decision, I would probably advocate for pausing LMS and trying to keep as many people as we could.
Tara?
I voted for the operational budget. Your question is hypothetical. It's not in the purview of the budget committee. It's an operational question. But do I think that if we get the default budget, there won't have to be staff cuts? I think there will be. I think there will have to be. Again, 80% is staffing.
The staffing contractual obligations that are built into the default, it is that is teachers, that is positions, that is healthcare, right, for these teachers.
Mm-hmm.
So that's already, there is a lot of it already built into it. Is that correct?
Into the default budget?
Who
But the
does
challenge
default?
is,
Who
like,
does the
School
default
board.
budget?
Business
The
administrator.
business administrator,
I
yeah.
worked with them.
But
too.
part of the challenge is the default does not include all of the energy increases.
But aren't we supposed to be reaping the benefits of the LMS project?
Due to supply chain issues, the solar array is not gonna actually be put in until this summer.
But
So,
when it's put in this summer, we should be reaping
We
those
should.
benefits, and this is the budget for next year. Okay.
yep.
I get very confused, but I'm doing my best to understand, and it's a big job to understand.
Yeah, it is.
I think there's a lot of similar sentiment around the table for this. I would hate to see any teachers go. I mean, buildings, they're necessary to operate a school, but I mean, without teachers and good teachers that stay in the town and continue to educate our kids, and looking at the salaries, I mean, you were saying, $5 million offset. A lot of these teachers don't make a lot of money, so it's not gonna be a few people, it's gonna be quite a few people that are gonna have to go to cover a $5,000 differential, right? I mean, when you have a lot of people that are under $100,000, I mean, that's quite a few heads to cover $5 million, so.
Okay. What's your opinion?
Well, I read that voting for the default is a cut, which again, sure, if we are at the federal level and lower than requested increases are a cut. Like you said, it's a $715,000 increase over the current spending. So, but it's a bottom line budget ultimately. We heard it deliberative that come hell or high water, it sounds like the school board wants their kitchen. So we are probably, perhaps we need, if the default goes through, that has to be reevaluated. I would absolutely support teachers instead of the kitchen. I have clearly had problems with the financing of that project, and I think that whole nother discussion needs to be had around that. But relative to the default, I looked at the numbers last night. The increases for the health insurance and the raises are in the default budget. The majority of the difference is the cost of the ongoing under budgeting or overspending of the LMS project. Yes, there are some added utility increases, but there are quite a bit of utility increases included in the default budget. So looking at it, I think it's painful and it's unfortunate that the rhetoric is gone. So I don't think this helps with the communication within town. To me, this is reminiscent of a superintendent several years ago who sent a reduction in force to the arts and music teachers 3 days before a budget vote in order to scare people into supporting a certain vote. So for me, I look at it in a very cynical manner. I'm like, sure. Because after that, we scared everybody into voting the higher budget. We returned more at the end of the year than the budget committee even said we were over. So it's just, let's have an honest discussion about what the budget means, what the default means. And it's not like the default is the end-all be-all. There's some wording at the end of that says, and this warrant authorizes the school board to call one special meeting. So if we honestly think that if the default budget is a problem, I would anticipate the school board calling a meeting to discuss, can we meet somewhere in the middle? Like, it
And
doesn't,
then when that happens, when you do that special meeting, okay, can you change the amount then at that meeting?
I assume it's a special meeting where, yes, you can say, look, a $1.5 million increase didn't go. We're concerned that a $700,000 increase isn't enough. Can we do 1.2? Like, can we come up with some, let's hash it out and come up with something in the middle.
The school,
But I don't think that the default budget has to be like the end-all be-all. I think there's still room for negotiation.
I was just gonna say, the school could present a new operating budget in that example. If we went into default and they call a special meeting, to Carrie's point, they could drop what the current operating is at down to a level that might garner the support that is better off than the default.
This is wicked interesting, guys. I know we're a little bit off the topic, but I think that for people that are watching, they're learning a lot about how our government actually works, that we can, if the default is the budget that's chosen, which for a lot of people that have come and spoken to me, the school budget's a tough one. The operational budget this year is it's
Painful.
it's had a lot of people coming up to me saying that it was tough. And then that scared me because I want the teachers to be in school and to know that there is another opportunity to look at where, I mean, to cut an $8,000 music teacher and have that be, this is your penalty for not voting. It's an $8,000 teacher, folks. You know, we put a $13,000 sign at LMS the other day. Come on, let's not say that, you know?
More than $8,000 to pay a music teacher, but
Oh, I thought it was an
It was
$8,000.
$100,000 with
no,
health
it's like
and
80, I think.
Oh, I thought it was an $8,000 position.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm so wrong.
It's
No, that was,
everything-
I'm sorry, that was the rec commission who added money into the,
Oh, all right.
that was the town side.
There's a lot of money
was Mr.
that's
Gannon.
moving around, and it's making me crazy. All right, so
need to- but-
I did have one question that came from a viewer to Kerry, and so Mr. Wagner wants to know with the picnic, could everybody come to the cookout? I want to go.
Sign up Genius, bring, potluck, everybody
Yeah,
brings
that would be
something.
really fun. And we haven't had a town picnic in a while. We had one, but it was more like food trucks and stuff. It would be kind of fun to do it. Have everybody. Now it's getting bigger. It always gets bigger. This one question was for Kerry. How will you break down that negative communication? I believe in assuming good intentions. How do you stop typing people? How do you help others know that you are doing this, and how do you build relationship with others so they can assume good intentions of you?
I mean, I'm involved throughout the town. I volunteer in a number of places, so I think the people who have the negative impact and view of me are people who don't know me or haven't. So if we have a conversation, let's have one. I like to talk. I have people like, oh, I don't have enough time to talk to you. But I would hope that people, I approach with an open slate, let's talk. I try not to form an opinion of somebody until I, get crucified all the time. So it's like, okay, clearly we're not going to be friends. Okay. But it doesn't mean we can't have a disagreement.
Oh, woe is me. Kate, what do you think your biggest accomplishment has been on the budget committee this year? It's your first year. You've gotten some stuff done. What's your big thing? And then I think we're done after this one last question.
Well, obviously, as a committee, it's all team effort. It's like one person might be the first person to like bring something up, but so we all kind of contribute little pieces of it. I think I'm proud of the fact that I've continued to advocate against cutting people, just because the committee or someone on the committee might say a certain position isn't necessary. That I just don't think that's the budget committee purview, and I don't think, and I've said that in meetings, and I think that pitting employees against each other as far as paying one salary over another, that's not the way to do it on the budget committee. So
You've had some great ideas, though, Kate.
thank you.
What is like your favorite idea that you had? I know that we kind of talked.
Well, I'm one of the things also that I've also been continuously working on is increasing that communication and transparency. So I'm an engineer, numbers person, but I'm not an accountant. So if I can't understand, say, like the business administrator or the town administrator budget reports, then I don't expect somebody that just goes online and wants to look at them can understand those things. So like I rewrote the budget hearing slides so that they were like direct comparison, make it much easier to understand for me.
Yeah.
And I think that helps, in general, helps the town, and really just try to bring like level-headed and collaborative work environment to the committees.
Thanks, Kate.
Yeah, probably a couple things come to mind. I think kind of big picture, I felt like this budget season was successful from the standpoint of we were a collaborative group. Did we disagree? Yes. I think part of the role of the chair that I learned this year and learned from people that have done it in the past is it really is about the tone that you set when you go into meetings. How are you being positive? How are you listening to everybody? How are you giving everyone an opportunity to speak and share their opinions and share their voices? I was pleased with, we walked out of our budget season on both the town and the school side, and I felt like we worked together and we came out of everything that we did as a committee moving forward. I think the second thing that I'm probably most proud of, and it maybe goes back over a year or two, is how we have slowly, and we're going to continue to get it better, is improved our school budgeting process. When I first started on the budget committee, we started this idea, and Mr. Cutter initiated it initially, is these joint sessions where it was an opportunity for the budget committee to attend and hear presentations by departments and schools. The first year we did it, we had no information. We went in kind of blind. We couldn't see the budgets. The second year, we got the information as we were listening to presentations, which was a little bit helpful and a small step forward. This year, I really pushed the school to get us the budget the same time that the school board got it. In the past, the school board would get it and the budget committee would get it a few days later, maybe even a day before we were going into our initial reviews. Now, we got it about 4 or 5 days earlier this year. In a perfect world, I'd like to see us have it even earlier than that for the opportunity to go in, to dig deeper, to start forming our questions when we begin that review process. And that's something, if I'm reelected, I'm going to continue to push on, is on both the town and the school side. There's transparency. We see information as early as possible, and we have everything we need at the right time to make our informed decisions.
That's excellent. That's really good. I've watched that process as an observer of the budget.
It's slowly gotten better,
Yeah.
and hopefully it continues to get better.
That should by itself help relations between the two boards. Terry, you are on a million committees as a school board member. You have touched every part of the community in the schools. What part of it do you feel the most satisfied by? What do you wake up and go, I'm a school board member and I did this and it was worth all the other crap that I've had to take?
Exactly. For me, it's the wellness committee. I believe in whole health and, eating well and exercising and the social emotional component of it. So for me, it's that. Do you want me to answer the other question too?
Which one?
The other previous question about,
She was on the committee.
Yeah, she was on budget.
yeah, I was
Oh,
on.
that's right. I'm sorry.
I
but-
was on the. So for me.
Well, you can have two answers then, because you were on those two very important committees.
So yes, I was the school board rep to the budget committee this
Yes.
past year.
So
So
what was your-
for me, I feel like the biggest success was literally just jumping in. And honestly, that's what I did initially when I joined school board. There was a previous school board member who couldn't commit to it anymore, so they dropped off, so I jumped in. It was like drinking water from a fire hose the first year. I've gone through the learning process. I developed a new process at the school side so that questions would be, number one, answered, but also answered more effectively and quicker than they have been in the past. And I'm hoping that continues. Just by listening to all of the meetings that I did while I was dog walking, I was able to find some reductions at the town side as well, that were actually something that,
So thinking on your feet.
a
and doing the
director
research.
had brought to the selectmen.
So thinking on your feet and being able to survive it.
So I think I would also just like to leave with, I prefer to listen more than I talk. And I think that that's what people can expect from me on the budget committee.
We're going to get to final statements.
I'm not afraid.
We're going to get there.
Okay.
We're going to get there.
Okay.
But just this one last question. I've forgotten it. How about you?
I'll make something up.
With the CIP board, what are you most proud of that happened with the CIP board? It's hard with five people.
I think
You're doing a good job.
for sure. I think one of the challenges we had on the CIP was there was a lot of delays coming into the tail end of our evaluation. With some of the things up in there with the school, So we had to make a couple decisions, and I kind of suggested we take a kind of a different approach and just kind of look at this year, and get that into the plan, and then come back and deal with the remaining year this year to push back out to another 6 this year.
So being able to move forward even though other
Yeah.
things were, so
Yeah.
that's a good quality. Carrie, what are you most proud of this year? I'm dying to know.
Well, I am proud of how the budget committee worked together. I mean, yes, there's a number of different views and opinions, but I think we're a good team. We worked well. From a budget committee perspective this year, the work on the CIP, I think as a budget committee representative, I feel is one of the things I'm happy about. We talked a lot about forward planning and determining the annualized cost of replacing various equipment and machinery. Rather than being very typical of Litchfield and being reactive and say, hey, something broke down, let's fix it. Let's say, hey, I have this piece of equipment that in the next couple of years is going to be a problem. How should I plan ahead for it? Let's start putting away money and especially in today's day as a number, pay ourselves interest instead of paying interest later. So how to use that better, working with the fire department to get, to support their new the fire truck that hopefully passes at the ballot. And also, one of the things that came up, and a little known thing on the CIP, is pushing for updated impact fees. We have some big things coming down the pike on this town. And one of the ways we fund those is through impact fees. And the reality is they haven't been updated in a long time. And so advocating for that, and finally seeing that hopefully those will be updated soon, because we've all seen the new developments in town.
Yeah, CIP definitely.
We
is
lost,
helping
the
us.
reality is, had our impact fees been updated in a more timely manner, we may have had a little bit more revenue to offset some of these costs. So hopefully by updating these impact fees as we go forward, we can start bringing in another source, additional revenue through some of those to help offset the impact that these developments are going to have.
Can I make a quick plug for the March 21st Planning Board meeting where we will be discussing this at 7 p.m. Town Hall?
Excellent, because
You can say it in your final statements again. You got an extra question, so I'm skipping you for your final thoughts.
All right.
I'm going to go to you. What is your final thought? Why should we vote for you? Make it a quick one.
Make it a quick one. Well, like I said, I've been on the CIP. I do a lot of budgeting. I do a lot of personnel oversight. I frequently have to deal with personalities and listening. I mean, especially with our clients when we're dealing with software engineering, there's a lot of times we sit down with clients and, we don't have architects with drawings that we can discuss. So a lot of it's verbal, and we have to look at iterative processes to get kind of to the end. And so sometimes we put it out and then we go back to the client and we cycle through, and a lot of those exercises are listening, and then having collaborative conversations to make sure everybody's on the same page to get things out the door.
Good luck. Tara.
I've lived in town for 27 years. I have been a town resident without kids in the school longer than I have had kids in the school or will have kids in the school. So I think I can keep the priorities in mind, and all taxpayers in mind. I am I think a topic that's come up recently is the interest of keeping everybody in town, and I feel very strongly about that. And I will always think about those on a fixed income. That is part of where my income comes from in my family now, and I work for a nonprofit, so I'm not getting 8% increases. So I'm in the same boat as a lot of people. I'm a critical thinker, inquisitive, detail-oriented, and like I said, I'll listen more than I talk.
Thank you, Tara. Good luck. JD?
Yeah, I think one of the unique things you have about everyone sitting up here is we've all been a part of boards over the last year or more. I think it's a great opportunity for people that are here today, that are listening, that are going to watch this. Go on YouTube. Go to LCTV. Go to the town YouTube channel and watch school board, budget committee, CIP meetings, because I think it gives you an opportunity to hear us talk about everything we've talked about today. Are we going to ask questions? Are we going to listen? Are we going to bring in multiple perspectives? There's an opportunity to see and hear that by going back and watching some of those meetings. The town does a really nice job of organizing that off the town website. So I think go and find those, because in advance of Tuesday, it's a great way to hear us validate everything we've talked about for the last hour and a half. I've said all these things kind of throughout, but kind of summarizing, I'm going to listen. I'm willing to ask tough questions, and I'm willing to ask questions of people representative of everyone across town. People that have kids in school, people that don't have kids in school, and people that have been in town for 200 plus years. I want to build relationships, rapport, and trust with those people and ensure that all of those perspectives are brought to the table for the budget committee.
Thank you very much. Good luck.
Thanks.
Kate?
I guess I just want to say when it really comes down to it, I try to ground myself in the CIP, which is originally based on a survey that the planning board put out of our town citizens, and the priorities were clear. It was conservation, fire truck, and new elementary school. And you can see that also the support between those are also shown in voting records. Like the elementary school has been consistently supported. The designs towards that have been consistently supported over the past few years, funding that project. I know there's contention between the default budget and the operating budget for the school, but at deliberative, the cuts to that operating budget were voted down by the people that attended. And when it comes down to it, I know, and you could tell there's great disagreement on the budget committee, but when it comes down to it, it was recommended by the committee to support that operating budget. And I was one of the people that voted, towards that, because I do think that we need to continue working towards investing in our infrastructure and working towards that greater goal, and that the original CIP survey and committee have, put together for us to guide the entire town. So I really do try to lean on that, and I also want to work on taking that people aspect out of it, put the policies and the processes into place that mistakes like the under budgeting of the LMS project can't happen. If part of the reason why we weren't getting information is because there's people butting heads, that's inexcusable. That needs to be rectified, and I think putting set processes into place can just take that piece out of it. We shouldn't have to depend on chairs getting along for things to get done in town. We just need to keep.
And people should come to the March 21st.
Yes,
Board.
there is a lot of things coming up planning board wise, and we're just beginning the talks on March 21st at 7:00.
Thank you all so much for being so patient with me. Thank you all for being so patient with the people that live here. And thank you for using so much of your own time, which is a small commodity that we have while we're here, to put it towards helping other people. I appreciate you all greatly.
Thank
Thank you for offering this.
Thank you, Diane.
We're going to take a brief intermission, really brief, as the selectmen get ready to answer the next round of questions, and I'm going to have another bottle of water. Thanks very much, everybody, for tuning in. That's more schoolwork.